Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment to share your thoughts. It really means a lot to me. This is a story that's been haunting me ever since I read it, a slow unraveling of trust, the kind you don't see coming until everything you thought was solid starts to break beneath your feet. The car radio played something forgettable, some pop ballad I'd heard 100 times as I turned off Highway 14 onto Delaney Avenue. It was 6:42 p.m., the usual time my body shifted from the stress of managing the docks to the comfort of home. After 16 years of the same drive, the familiar curve of the road should have brought peace. My shoulders would usually drop, my jaw would unclench, but that night everything felt wrong. Red and blue lights tore through the fading dusk, dancing across the well-kept lawns of our quiet neighborhood. It was surreal. Rows of police cruisers parked like they were staging a war zone, their radios spitting out codes I didn't understand. An ambulance blocked the street, its doors flung open while paramedics moved swiftly around a stretcher. My house, our house, was at the center of it all. Yellow crime scene tape flickered in the evening breeze, like twisted party streamers, wrapping around the fence I'd painted myself last summer. A uniformed officer stood watch by the gate, arms crossed, his face unreadable. And there, where guests usually parked, a luxury coupe blazed like a bonfire, smoke curling upward into the darkening sky while firefighters fought to control the flames. I pulled into the driveway automatically, my hands acting on instinct, while my mind struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe an incident from a few houses down had somehow bled into our yard. Harper was probably inside, scared and confused, watching it unfold through the curtains, just like me. As I approached the gate, the officer stepped forward. One hand rested casually on his belt. "Sir, I need you to stay behind the tape." I pulled out my wallet. "This is my house. Logan Bennett. I live here. What's going on? Is my wife okay?" The officer took his time inspecting my license, glancing between the photo and my face more than once. "She's inside, sir. Detective Renner will want to speak with you." He led me past the tape. As I followed, I caught a glimpse of the man being loaded into the ambulance. Bloodied face, tailored suit ripped and darkened with dirt and blood. I didn't recognize him, not even a little. That's when Detective Renner appeared. Mid-40s, tired eyes, notepad in hand. The kind of woman who looked like she hadn't taken a real vacation in years. "Do you know this man, Mr. Bennett?" "No, I've never seen him before in my life." "Where have you been this evening?" she asked, without skipping a beat. "At work. Harper Freight Distribution. I oversee the prep team on the evening shift. I left the floor at 6:30, same as I always do. You can check the cameras, the time cards, ask any of the guys." She didn't look up from her notes. "We'll need those details. According to your wife, this man was a friend who stopped by unannounced. She claims someone attacked him in front of the house and torched his car. Do you know anyone who might want to do something like that?" The ground beneath me felt like it had shifted. Harper didn't have male friends I didn't know. In the 14 years we'd been married, she'd never been one for spontaneous company. Everything had to be planned. Everything had to be perfect. "That doesn't make sense," I muttered. "She doesn't just invite people over. She needs time to prep the house, cook, clean. She stresses about it for days." Detective Renner raised her eyebrow. "So you're saying she's structured?" I replied, "She's meticulous. She wouldn't let someone just drop by. And you're certain no one would want to harm you or send you a message by hurting a visitor? The accusation hit me hard. That's what this was. They thought I did it, that I'd come home, found some man here, and lost control, that I beat him nearly to death and torched his car. Detective, I was on the floor from 2 p.m. until I clocked out at 6:30. There are security logs, surveillance video, and at least 10 people who can vouch for me. She scribbled something else down, then nodded. We'll confirm everything. In the meantime, please understand this is still an active crime scene. The house will be processed for evidence. Can I see my wife? Her face softened slightly. She's shaken, said she's never seen anything like this before. I followed her through the door. The inside of our home had transformed. Cameras flashing, evidence bags piling up, officers murmuring into radios. It smelled like smoke and guilt. Harper sat hunched on the couch, wrapped in a gray blanket. Her hands trembled around a chipped coffee mug, mascara running in jagged streaks. When she saw me, fresh tears welled up. "Logan," she gasped, "it was awful." I sat beside her, but something about her posture stopped me from touching her. She was shaking, yes, but not just from fear. There was something else there, something I couldn't quite name, something that felt an awful lot like guilt. "Who was he, Harper?" I asked gently. She swallowed hard, eyes darting. "Just a friend from the gym. I barely know him." But even as she said it, I could feel everything we'd built starting to fracture. David. That's the name she gave him, David something. She said he stopped by to see if we wanted to join his book club. Her voice shook with each word, but there was a strange smoothness to the way she said it. A book club. Harper hadn't finished a book in the entire time I'd known her, let alone joined a group to talk about one. Detective Renner stood quietly nearby, watching. Her eyes didn't miss a thing. Not the way Harper avoided looking at me, the hesitation in her voice, the fake shiver that came a beat too late. She was writing notes, maybe about our tone, our posture, the way I looked more confused than heartbroken. The weight of her scrutiny settled over me like cold fog. And the worst part? I couldn't even resent it. If I were her, I'd suspect me too. "The fire crew's finished with the vehicle," Renner said finally. "We'll need to keep the property sealed until forensics finishes processing the scene. You're free to enter your home, Mr. Bennett, but please understand, you're still considered a person of interest." Person of interest. The phrase echoed louder than the sirens outside, louder than the thudding in my chest. I stepped into my house, feeling like a trespasser. At 11:30 p.m., the last police officer shut the front door behind him. Harper and I were alone for the first time since the chaos began. But this silence wasn't peaceful. It was dense and heavy, like the air just before a tornado. No boots clunking across the hardwood, no radios crackling, no harsh voices discussing timelines and motives. Just me, my wife, and a gaping wound in the middle of our home. Harper had tossed the police-issued blanket on the floor and was pacing between the kitchen island and the living room like a ghost searching for its own death scene. Her hands twisted at each other. Her lips moved as if she were praying, but the only thing I could make out were half-sentences. "I can't believe this. Poor David. Who would do that to him?" There it was again. David. That name, spoken softly and with the kind of ache you don't usually reserve for a casual acquaintance. The third time she said it, something in me cracked. "Sit down, Harper. We need to talk." She perched on the farthest edge of the leather armchair, the one that never faced the couch, never invited intimacy. It was the first time I could recall her not sitting beside me when we were alone. The mascara she'd fixed for the detective still held, but her lipstick was long gone. I found myself wondering when she'd lost it, and who she'd been kissing when she did. "Tell me about David," I asked quietly. "I already told you," she snapped, too quickly. "He's just some guy from the gym." "What's his last name?" The silence that followed lasted longer than it should have. Harper blinked, her mouth opened slightly, then shut again. Her gaze drifted to the window, to the blackened frame of the burned car still barely visible under the street lamp. "Davidson," she finally said. "What gym?" She blinked again. "What?" "You've been going to Iron Hill Fitness for 3 years. I've picked you up there more times than I can count. Which trainer is David? What does he teach?" The mask cracked. The unraveled story. "He's not a trainer. He's just a member who—" I leaned forward, keeping my voice even. "I've seen the credit card statements. You haven't scanned into that gym in 6 months." Her whole body stiffened. The air turned brittle. Outside, a dog barked once and then fell silent. The refrigerator hummed like nothing had happened, but Harper's breathing grew rapid and shallow, and her hands started shaking again. "Logan, I can explain." "Can you?" My voice rose, still controlled but no longer soft. "A stranger shows up to our house driving a BMW worth more than our mortgage. He gets beat half to death in our driveway. His car is set on fire, and the police think I did it. Meanwhile, my wife insists he's just a casual acquaintance." She flinched like I'd struck her. "I didn't see who attacked him," she stammered. "I was in the kitchen when I heard the noise. Glass breaking, shouting. I looked out and saw David on the ground. I called 911 right away." "What was he doing here, Harper?" She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. "He just wanted to talk about some personal things." The truth sat in the spaces between her words, in the way she wouldn't look at me, in the guilty slump of her shoulders. I felt a hollow cold sweep through my chest. "How long?" I asked, voice trembling for the first time that night. "Logan, how long have you been sleeping with him?" Her face collapsed. Tears flooded her eyes and poured freely now. 6 months, but it didn't mean anything. I was lonely. You're always at work. He made me feel—" "Get out." "What?" I stood slowly. "Go pack whatever you need. You're sleeping in the guest room tonight." "We can fix this," she cried. "It was a mistake, but I love you. I'd choose you." David was just what, Harper? Just a mistake that required 6 months of lies? Just a mistake that ended with a crime scene in our driveway? She reached for me, fingers curling around my sleeve. "Please, I'm so sorry. I'll never see him again. I'll do anything." I looked down at her hands, the same hands that had touched another man, the same hands that had removed her wedding ring earlier tonight and then put it back on before the police showed up, thinking I wouldn't notice the faint tan line. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The tan line on her finger told the story before she could, a faint outline where her wedding band had rested for over a decade, now uneven and betrayed by skin that hadn't seen light in years. She had removed it sometime that night, maybe for him, maybe just to look at herself differently for a while. "I'm calling Natalie in the morning," I said, my voice low and steady. "She wrote our prenuptial agreement 13 years ago, and I'm enforcing every clause." Her face drained of color so fast it was like watching a photograph fade. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." Harper didn't respond. She stood frozen for several seconds, eyes wide, arms limp at her sides, swaying as though her body couldn't quite remember how to stay upright. Then she turned without another word and slowly made her way upstairs. I stayed in the living room, staring through the window at the shape beneath the tarp. The burned frame of Davidson's car sat like a grim statue in our driveway, a symbol of everything that had been lost, scorched beyond recognition. 20 minutes later, Harper came back down, dragging a suitcase and clutching a pillow like it might protect her from what she'd done. She paused at the guest room door and looked back at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I never meant for this to happen." "But it did," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "And now we both have to live with the consequences." The guest room door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Minutes later, her sobs broke through the walls, not soft crying, but the kind that sounds like something inside is breaking for real. I didn't go to her. Instead, I climbed the stairs and entered our bedroom, my bedroom now. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the sheets. For the first time in years, I had the whole bed to myself. I lay flat on my back, staring at the ceiling, not thinking of heartbreak or sorrow, but of logistics, divorce papers, asset protection, alibis. Down the hall, her crying faded into a hiccuping rhythm, and then into silence. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, Natalie Marin greeted me from behind her sleek walnut desk, her office an intimidating mix of glass walls and leather-bound law books. She'd been handling high-asset divorces in St. Paul for over 2 decades, and her reputation for building bulletproof prenups was the reason I'd sought her out all those years ago. She flipped open the files she'd pulled from her archive. "I remember this one. Your wife's attorney tried to get her out of signing it 3 times. I nodded and placed a manila folder on the desk in front of her. She signed it anyway, and now I need to enforce it. Natalie slid the folder closer and scanned the contents. Let's see. Section 4, Adultery Clause. In the event of extramarital sexual activity, the offending party forfeits rights to spousal support, division of shared assets, and any jointly acquired property. She glanced up over the rim of her glasses. "Do you have proof?" I reached into my coat and pulled out a flash drive. Police report from Tuesday, Harper's signed statement admitting to a 6-month affair, restaurant receipts, hotel bookings, gift charges on a card she thought I never checked. Natalie plugged in the drive and scrolled through the files with clinical focus, jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. She paused on the report, lips pressed into a line. "Her own words under questioning," she murmured. "Textbook violation of the agreement. But Logan, I have to ask, did you have anything to do with what happened to this man?" "I was on shift from 2 to 6:30 Tuesday night. Security cameras, time logs, a dozen co-workers, all confirm my alibi. The police already cleared me." She exhaled slowly. "Good, because if there were even a hint you retaliated, it could muddy the waters." She leaned back in her chair and studied me carefully. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? No room for reconciliation?" That question hit me like a slap. "She's been lying to me for half a year. She let another man into our home, into our bed. She made me a suspect in a violent crime. What exactly would I be forgiving?" Natalie gave a grim smile. "Fair enough. I'll file today. Under the terms of your agreement, Harper has 7 days to vacate the marital home and 30 days to retain her own attorney. She keeps her personal items, her car, and that's it. Everything else, home, investments, retirement, stays with you." "How long until it's final?" I asked. 6 to 8 weeks, assuming she doesn't fight it, but with this much evidence and a rock-solid prenup, any attorney would advise her to take the deal." I left Natalie's office feeling strange, lighter, but also hollow. The sunlight outside seemed too bright. The world kept turning even as mine had tilted off its axis. But for the first time since Tuesday, I knew what came next. When I got home, Harper was already waiting. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, her posture stiff, her eyes hopeful. She had made her makeup, her hair curled the way I used to like. She wore the blue dress I'd once said made her look like she belonged in a painting. "She made reservations at Donatelli's 7:30, she said, with a hopeful smile. "We could talk, really talk." I set my briefcase down and loosened my tie. "Cancel them." "Logan, please, we can go to counseling. Dr. Keller has an opening next week. I already called." "Stop," I said quietly. She didn't see the envelope yet, the one in my briefcase. Signed, notarized, ready. But she would, and soon. She looked so small in that blue dress, like a woman pretending this was still her home, still her life. And for a moment, despite everything, I felt something close to pity. Not forgiveness, not love, just a soft ache for the version of her I used to believe in. "You need to call a lawyer," I said. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug. "Today?" she asked, like she hadn't heard me right. "Not tomorrow, not next week, today." Her mouth parted, but no words came, just disbelief. "Logan, what are you talking about?" "I filed for a divorce this morning. The papers will be served tomorrow." The mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the tile. Hot coffee splashed across the floor and her bare feet, but she didn't flinch. She just stared at the mess, stunned. Like she couldn't comprehend what was happening. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "I am. I made one mistake." "You made the same mistake for 6 months straight," I said flatly. Her face twisted. These weren't the sobs from the night of the fire, raw, ashamed, grieving. These were different. This was rage dressed up as sorrow, the kind of crying meant to pull something from me, not reveal anything true. "Fine," she snapped, rising to her feet. "Divorce me, but you don't get to throw me out with nothing. I gave you the best years of my life." "No," I said coldly. "You gave me 12 years of lies, and our prenup is very clear. Infidelity means you get nothing." The mask dropped instantly. Her crying stopped, just like that. Her features hardened, and her voice dropped low. "You bastard. You planned this." "I planned for the possibility that you might turn out to be exactly who you are." She shoved her chair back, the legs scraping against the tile. "I'll fight it. I'll contest everything. No judge will enforce that ridiculous agreement." "Good luck with that," I replied. "Natalie Marin thinks otherwise." The name hit her like a slap. Everyone in our circle knew Natalie. Her name came with weight and ironclad outcomes. Harper backed towards the stairs, her eyes still wide but her voice faltering now. "I just need time to think about this. This is all happening too fast." "Take all the time you need," I said. "You've got 7 days to move out." She paused at the bottom step, fingers wrapping tightly around the railing. "What about the investigation? What if the police come back? What if they arrest you?" "They won't," I said. "My alibi is solid." "But what if—" I cut her off. "I didn't hurt your boyfriend, Harper, but I'm not going to let his consequences become my consequences. Not anymore." She turned and walked upstairs without another word. The walls between us stretched further than they ever had before. An hour passed. I heard her on the phone, maybe her sister, maybe her mom, spinning a story where she was the betrayed one. Let her. By morning, none of it would matter. I ordered Chinese food and ate alone at the kitchen table, going over the preliminary asset inventory Natalie had drawn up. The house, the savings, my retirement, all protected. Everything we'd agreed on when she signed that prenup in a rush to become Mrs. Bennett. That night, I slept in our bed. She stayed in the guest room. I could still hear her voice through the walls, high and sharp 1 minute, hushed and tearful the next, as she tried to find someone who would say what she wanted to hear. But the facts were undeniable, so were the signatures, and in a few weeks, I'd be free. The next day I found myself sitting under the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights at the downtown police station. Detective Renner sat across from me, flipping through her notes for what felt like the 100th time. "So, you left work at 6:30 Tuesday night." "Yes," I said. She nodded slowly. "Your supervisor confirmed that. Security footage shows you badged out at 6:32. "That's right." "Did you drive straight home?" "Same route I always take." She flipped another page, scanning it. "We've reviewed the footage, spoken to your coworkers, and verified everything. Your timeline holds." I kept my face neutral, controlled. I hope that clears things up." "It does," she said, finally closing the file. "You're no longer considered a person of interest in Mr. Davidson's assault." I exhaled, not realizing how much tension I'd been holding in. That's good to hear. "Any idea who might have done it?" She turned off the recorder, but her eyes stayed on mine. "Between you and me, these kinds of attacks are rarely random. It's usually personal. Given that Mr. Davidson was at your house, visiting your wife, I think she knows more than she's saying." I nodded, just once. That's not my problem anymore. The divorce was already making the rounds in town. I could hear it in the way she said those last few words. I could see it in her softened posture. She knew I was moving on. Walking out of the station felt like stepping into a different world. The sun hit my skin, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I had to brace for something else to go wrong. But as I drove home, I let my thoughts drift to the night of the fire. Not the version I'd told the police, the real version. Because I had left work at 6:30 p.m., but I hadn't driven straight home. Stripping off the gloves and mask, I scrubbed my hands in the basement sink. The water ran pink for a moment before clearing. I changed clothes, tucked everything away in the locked cabinet at the back of the workshop, then circled the block in my truck. At exactly 6:47 p.m., I turned onto Delaney Avenue with a carefully constructed expression of confusion. By the time I stepped out of the truck, the performance had already begun. That memory hovered like a ghost as I pulled into the driveway again. Davidson's car had long been towed. Only a scorched scar remained on the pavement, a reminder that something had burned here, something important. Harper's car was gone too. She hadn't been back since the papers were served, probably still with her sister. Inside, the house felt unfamiliar in a strangely comforting way. It was quieter, lighter, like it had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. I poured a few ounces of bourbon and sat in the leather chair she used to call an eyesore. Through the window, Mrs. Adler was out front watering her roses, probably watching, probably wondering. Letter. The police file was closed. The marriage was over. Davidson, what was left of him, would be learning to walk again by spring. The bourbon had never tasted this smooth. My phone buzzed. A message from Harper. "Please call me. We need to talk about the house." I stared at the screen for a beat, then hit delete. We'd already said everything that needed to be said. Now it was her turn to live in the silence. The sun slipped low on the horizon, streaking the sky in deep orange and violet. In a few hours, I'd go to bed without the thermostat arguments, without the restless sighing. Tomorrow, I'd wake up with no one to answer to. Just me and the road ahead. 2 weeks after the divorce finalized, I stood in the kitchen making coffee for one. The morning news droned on. Weather forecast, mild and sunny. Good conditions for golf. Mike was picking me up at 9. Harper had moved out the day before, taking only what the prenup allowed: her car, her clothes, her jewelry, and the realization that her decisions had cost her everything else. The house felt bigger now, but not empty, just mine. The silence didn't ache anymore. The local news gave a brief update on Davidson. He'd been released from the hospital, walking cast and all, with pins in his ribs and a long recovery ahead. The police had closed the case. No suspects, no arrests. The reporter floated the theory of a robbery gone wrong. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window, unsurprised. Mike pulled up right on time. We spent the morning at Meadow Crest Country Club. I'd kept the membership all those years, despite Harper's endless complaints about the cost. She called it frivolous. Now I knew better. It was an investment in my freedom. By the 10th tee, Mike looked over and said, "You seem different, lighter." 12 years of dead weight will do that to a man, I said. "Any regrets?" I lined up the shot. thinking about that night in the basement, about the precise swing that shattered bone and silence in one motion. About the divorce? No. About waiting so long? Yeah. The ball sailed straight and landed clean. Lunch at the clubhouse brought curious glances, quiet nods, and words of support. Word had traveled: Harper's affair, the prenup, the fallout. In our circle, trust still mattered, dignity still counted, and most people seemed to think I'd done the right thing. Mike leaned over his sandwich. I heard she's with her parents. Prenup gave her 60 days to find a place. That's rough, he added. No, that's consequences. He nodded. He'd been through his own version years ago without the safety net. No prenup, no mercy. That night I cooked dinner, steak the way I like it, wine from the bottle she always said was too expensive for a Tuesday. I didn't rush. I ate slowly. No conversation, no tension. Just the clink of silverware and the quiet hum of a house that finally felt like home. Later, my phone lit up. Her name. A voicemail. I didn't answer. 3 minutes of crying and promises, begging for another chance, promising she'd changed. I deleted it before it finished. At 10 o'clock, I went to bed. My bed. King size. No emotional landmines, no passive-aggressive conversations. Just sheets, silence, and sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Harper, thinking about Davidson, thinking about how sometimes justice doesn't need a gavel or a courtroom. Sometimes justice looks like a man finally sleeping in peace. Stories like this, however dramatized, reflect painful truths many face in silence. Betrayal, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation aren't always loud. They often simmer beneath the surface, eroding trust little by little until one person is left carrying all the weight. If you've been hurt by someone who was supposed to protect your heart, know that you are not alone, and you are not powerless. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Document what you need to. Seek advice early. Understand your legal rights, especially in long-term partnerships. And most importantly, never let guilt or fear stop you from drawing boundaries. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but peace is possible. Sometimes it begins with a decision to stop fixing what someone else keeps breaking. If someone keeps choosing disrespect, you are allowed to choose yourself.